Welcome to the Mike Litton Experience Podcast. Mike has over 31 years experience in real estate, finance, and investing. He's passionate about being a father, a teacher, a realtor, an investor, and a leader. Everyone has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. And now, introducing the host of the Mike Litton Experience, Mike Litton.
So what can you expect from the Mike Litton Experience? You can expect stories that will inspire, motivate, advice that will sharpen your focus, and expert information on real estate, finance, and market conditions. Part of me today. I mean, we haven't been in business since 2018, right? And a bunch of those people are coming back to me and going, Mike, you got to open up a company again. You got to do this again. And I'm not going to, but they're asking me to,
Right.
And it's just an absolute honor for them to do that,
Well, the thing that I think is so important is we need to have a meaning in our lives. Okay. So you think about it, if it's easy to get a job right now, then all of a sudden what you make for a living and your insurance and things like that starts to become kind of equalized everywhere. So you need to feel like where you're at, you're appreciated, and that you're actually doing something of value other than you're just making a little bit of money. Yeah. A great example is we work with a really great company called Rev, R-E-V, Rev Group, and they make the most ambulances in the nation. So they make more ambulances than any other company, and they have many brands. And I was talking to one of their workers at a facility, and I said, "Hey, what do you do?" And he said, "I plug in wire harnesses." I said, "Okay." I said, "What else?" He goes, "Well, sometimes I tighten bolts." I said, "Okay." I said, "How's it going?" He goes, "Well, I'm thinking of leaving here for 25 cents an hour and going down the street to work at a marshmallow factory." I said, "Marshmallow factory?" I said,
What?
I said, "Now, if you look at each one of these ambulances that you put these wire harnesses in, each one of them going down the line," and there were like 10 of them down the line right in front of us. I said, "Each one lasts about 10 years. And he goes, yeah. I said, "Okay, now during the 10 years, each year there are 4,000 accidents with ambulances in the United States because they're going through intersections and semi-tractor trailers are hitting them and cars are hitting them." Okay. I said, "So they got to be well made." He goes, "Yeah." I said, "Now, during the 10 years, there will be about 100,000 people who are in that ambulance. So it'll be the driver, it'll be a couple of EMTs, the techs, the patient, sometimes patient family, and all that." I said, "So each one of those going down the line will have 100,000 people that are saved or protected." Mm-hmm. And he went, "I never thought I was in the life-saving business.
Yeah.
But maybe I am."
Yeah.
And we've got to realize that if you have a choice between, let's say, making marshmallows, which there's nothing wrong with that, it's great, or you go, "You know what? I'm actually making a difference. I'm making sure that 100,000 people per unit that goes down the line are protected."
Right.
I would suggest to you and your listeners that not only would that person be retained longer at that job, but that individual might also make sure he plugs those wire harnesses in just right.
Right.
And he may stop the line if something gets to him that looks like it's not, done right, something that needs to be fixed.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with that.
That's the purpose in our lives. That one thing he did, if he made sure that was right, if he stopped the line, if he was allowed to, and Rev Group wants you to stop the line if there's a problem, he may have saved lives doing that. Oh, yeah. Okay, well, you know what? That makes you feel better during a day where, the weather was crappy, or whether you hurt your back doing something. It makes you feel better, and it gives you some purpose in your life.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And the title of your book is The Power of Differentiation, right?
Right.
I truly believe that a way that people can, and I know we haven't talked about this before, so I know I'm springing this on you, but a way that people can differentiate themselves if you don't mind, if it's okay if I tell you a real quick story. So I'm in real estate out here, and a real estate broker, have been for 32 years. And I sold a house last year for a client of mine that I had been a client for decades. And I sold their house for $110,000 above list price. And I presented the offer to the husband. He signed it right away, presented it to the wife. And she said, I'm not sure I want to sell. I'm not sure I want to move, Mike. So I said, well, why don't we look at getting you a rental? Sell the house. You can rent a place back for a year, right? So I start going to work trying to find a rental. So I open up my network and I get a photograph of a for rent sign. I call them the for rent sign. Guy calls me back 3 hours later. We spend over an hour on the phone having a conversation, not about the house that he's renting, that he owns, but about parenting.
Yeah.
Of all things, he's got an 11-year-old, 13-year-old, and 15-year-old at home, and he's a chief of staff at one of the largest hospitals in our area. And he's asking me parenting advice. And I explained to him that the way I parented my kids was I asked questions. I didn't talk at my kids, so I didn't order them around, right? What I did was I asked them questions. So I'll give you an example. When you're talking to somebody that's on the line at Rev and you're having a conversation with them about this, ask him a question like, let me ask you a question. How many of these are produced every year? How many people will be in these each year? How long do these last?
Right.
Let him tell you those things so
Absolutely.
that it's coming out of his mouth, and he's literally, because when it comes out of their mouth, it's real.
Yes.
It's real. And I really, truly believe that a major power of differentiation is somebody's ability to pull things out of somebody else, right?
Yes.
Ask them questions that then they're answering, that's basically reaffirming what it is that he's doing there and what his mission is.
Right.
Right. So anyway, that's what he basically spent an hour telling me how brilliant it was that I'd raised my children the way I'd raised my children. But I just explained to him, I said, if I walk into a room and I disagree with my children, it's very, very easy for me to say, no. I'm in charge. You're going to do what I say. Okay. Versus looking in and going, okay, so let me ask you a question. Why did you just answer me the way you did?
Right.
What's going on with you? What's holding you back? What is it that's tripping you up? Talk to me, right?
Right.
And what happens is, even when they're teenagers and they never talk to you, right? They appreciate the fact that you're asking. And human beings do too. They literally, Barry, they appreciate the fact that you care enough to ask.
Right.
Right?
Yes.
So that power of differentiation, I believe the power of questions can help out a lot. So tell us about that book in terms of what you cover in the book, because it's getting ready to be released, right?
Right. Well, one thing I want to add on what you just said that I think is great. You're correct. But here's one thing I'll add to what you're saying. We need to let our employees know that information as well. Not so much tell them what they're doing and why it's important, but as an example, that gentleman on the line did not know that 100,000 people were protected in there. He didn't know. He didn't know there were 4,000 accidents a year. And we as leaders, we have to express to our teams, here's what's going on, and this is what we're doing, because that person there, that young guy, could be the greatest cheerleader.
Absolutely.
But we have to let people know, because it's not understood. And one more thing I think that's interesting, and this is in the book, is it's not only important to let people know what they're doing is important and what the purpose is and the why behind why we do what we do, but we have to do it often. Every day. And it's not a formal thing. I'll have clients that go, we're going to have a big all employee meeting in 6 months, and we're going to tell everybody this and that. And I'll go, that's great. How about today? Well, we don't have a big meeting today. Well, you have a bunch of small ones. How about let people know and all that? So your question on the book is, one thing about the book that I think is important to mention is it's not about me or my life. It's not my story. It's the story of many, many different companies and leaders and how they tackled differentiating what they did so that their employees owned it and their customers stepped up and bought the product. And in many cases, it's stories of leaders working with people in their company as they all started to believe deeply in what they were bringing to the table.
Yeah.
It's a story also of discovery. So I'll give you an example. You brought up your children. A good example to look at is for all of us to look at our children. And if you want to look at differentiation, it's perfect in that way, because you may have one child who is a great athlete. You may have another child who is a really deep thinker. Now, if you take that deep thinker and you beat into that person that he or she needs to be an athlete, even if the child has some talent, you're going to frustrate them and they're not going to feel good about themselves.
Absolutely.
If you identify what they do well, meaning discover, you don't try to shoehorn them in. You don't say, look, darn it, I was a professional athlete and doggone it, you're going to be a professional. No.
Yeah.
If that kid is a very, very deep thinker, a brilliant mind, and he or she just doesn't care that much about sports, maybe is good enough to play a little bit, the best thing we can do for our children, the best thing we can do for our careers or our companies is discover what is unique.
Absolutely.
And support it.
Yeah, I totally
build
agree.
on it.
I totally
and you know
agree.
what? And this is a big word, celebrate it.
Yeah.
Celebrate. You did this.
Yep.
This is what's great. I used to coach kids sports because I'm a cheerleader type, not because I'm athletic.
Me
And
too.
my son was a really great athlete, and he played D2 baseball and was a great pitcher, starting pitcher, great. But I would coach his teams and my daughter's teams, and we would have celebrations at the end of each year, and each kid would win their own special award. It could be for best defense. It could be fastest on the team, whatever. But we identified what they did well. And by the way, I had teams that lost a lot of games. We had teams that did pretty well. It wasn't on the win-loss record. It was all on the uniqueness of each individual child in that case.
Yeah, celebrate their strengths. So one of the things that I never did when our kids were growing up is I never told them that they had to do anything.
Right.
I let them decide what they wanted to do, but I made sure that they were clear on what our standard was.
Yeah.
So if you choose to do it and you start it, you have to finish it, and you have to finish it to our standard. Right. And so my daughter got into cheerleading. She went out for cheerleading before her freshman year in high school.
Yeah.
I followed up with the coach, who I happen to know, and I said, how'd she do? And she said, well, Madison, my girl, was here and everybody else was down here. Okay. Big, huge split between, right? She said she could be the captain of our team now as a freshman, as an incoming freshman. So the coach goes to my daughter and says, I want to make you the captain of the cheer team. And my daughter says, I'm a freshman. There are other cheerleaders here who have been here longer than I have. I'm going to make them a captain. They've earned it. How amazing is that?
That's wonderful.
I mean, I have some of the highest quality kids you've ever met in your life, right?
Right.
So Michael decides at the end of 8th grade, summer of 8th grade, going into 9th grade, he comes to us and tells us that he wants to go out for football. And you could have knocked his mother and I over with a feather. We are huge football fans. His mother and I are. We were season ticket holders with the Chargers, the whole thing. Michael was never really a football fan. He didn't even watch it on television. We're like, are you sure? Yeah. Okay. And I had to ask him, I said, is there a girl involved? Because every stupid thing I ever did growing up, there was a girl involved, right? That I was trying to impress. And he goes, no, Dad, there's no girl involved. Turned out his best friend, who's still his best friend today, wanted to go out for football and asked him to go with him. So they went out for football together. So Michael goes out for football. He's in two-a-days for a week, right? They call it HE double hockey sticks week, right?
Yes.
They knew at the end of the 10th, at the end of the 10th practice on Friday, he was going to need his dad. So I went and picked him up. I picked him up in my brand new Ford F-150, and he slammed the door getting in the truck. And I have a thing about slamming doors, okay? Yeah. But especially my brand new truck. Slams the door. Okay, what's wrong? Dad, I'm mad. Okay. They just told me that I'm the backup right guard. I don't want to be a backup right guard. I want to be a tight end. I want to be a linebacker. I want to be a wide receiver. I said, let me ask you a question. Have you ever played organized tackle football before? He said, no. I said, you think your coaches know that? He goes, well, yeah. I said, okay, here's how I see it. Got two options. One is you can keep whining and you can ride the bench the entire season. Or Monday, when you go back to practice, you can strap your helmet on and you can hit the guy across from you in the mouth. Next play, hit him harder. Next play, hit him harder. Show them through your efforts, not your mouth, through your efforts that you're ready for promotion. Monday, I go to pick him up at practice. The varsity coach, who I'm still friends with today, comes clear across the field. Mr. Litton, Mr. Litton, Mr. Litton. Yeah? Who's that? I said, that's my son, Michael. He goes, well, he doesn't play like him. What happened between Friday and today? I said, well, we had a talk. He said, keep talking to him. So he's a freshman, never played organized tackle football before, playing JV. By his fourth game, he had been elected captain of the team, starting right guard, starting linebacker, starting special teams. They have very few kids, so they had to play Ironman football. Okay. Right. Just in and of itself, something that when you watch it, it just blows your mind, right? Especially if you played like I did, right? Because we had plenty of kids in Oklahoma. So they go all the way through the season. They get to the end of the season. They promote Michael to varsity. He's a freshman, mind you. They promote him to varsity for their first ever playoff game. He's starting special teams, plays the game. They lose. We're on our way home. And I said, Michael, are you pumped up about next season? And he goes, nope. And I said, why is that? And he said, Dad, I don't want to play football anymore. Okay. He said, playing football this year made me love basketball even more. I want to play basketball full time if that's okay. So of course it's okay. Right. Right. And he said, but I knew our standard and I knew how I had to finish. Yeah. Isn't great. That amazing? I love it. It was just incredible. It was absolutely incredible. But it came from that frustration, right? And it was one of those things where we literally never told them they had to do a single thing. They just chose what they wanted to do, right? Gave them the standard, and they not only reached the standard, oftentimes they exceeded it. That's great. And my son was a great junior golfer. And when he was 9 years old, he and I went out playing one day. He got a hole in one at 9 years old. That's so cool. And within a month, he goes, I want to quit golf. I'm so frustrated. And I said, why? He said, because I want to have a hole in one every hole. And you can't do that. It's not possible. He said, I want to play baseball. And I said, well, if you're going to play baseball, that's great, but you got to do your best. Yeah. That's it. I said, I don't care if you are the best, but you got to be the best you can be. Right. And he said, I can do that. And same kind of thing. That's all you can ask. Right. But you can't just dabble and then leave when it doesn't feel good. And he stayed in baseball for, I don't know, 8 more years, however many more years. 15 more years. Yeah, and that was the love of his life till he met his girlfriend, of course. Exactly. Yeah. So my son was the MVP for his high school football team or basketball team, pardon me. He was the MVP his junior and senior year. So loved basketball and did really, really well. So it's incredible. Okay. So let's talk about the book a little more if we could. Sure. So the people that are going to want to read this book is pretty much anybody who wants to succeed in business and in life. Yeah, it's all about if you have any interest in identifying what makes you unique, what makes what you do, offer, sell, etc. unique, and you want to motivate and inspire the people who are on your team, that's what this book is about. Yeah. It is a very positive book. You know, sometimes you read these books and it's, oh, these people were stupid and I was great and I saved them. It's not that kind of a book. It's a book of some really great examples of how what might seem unattractive or uninteresting was made fascinating. Yeah. You know, how one company
with a lot of competition, like in your field, Mike, as an example, people selling real estate. That house that somebody is selling is the same house somebody else is going to sell.
Yep.
How do you differentiate yourself? I mean, what do you bring to the table? How can you identify something within you that customer goes, wow,
Yeah,
that made a difference? And so what the book is about is all about those examples, and it gets into some granular examples as to, for instance, in photography, if you're doing photography of your team or yourself, how do you position yourself in that? How do you use technology? What about the words you use? You know, there are 200,000 words in the English language, 200,000. And how often do we hear the same garbage words used over and over and over again? They mean nothing.
Amen.
So if you start to describe what you do, either as an individual or as a company, do you use the same stinking words? Do you say, oh, we're all about value? Oh, we're all about cost. Come on, get rid of those words, those cliches.
Absolutely.
And get into words that mean something.
Well,
to
words
you.
mean everything.
They do.
Words mean everything.
Words create worlds.
Yeah.
And we have to realize that in part of how we can set ourselves apart is in the words we use about what we are and what we stand for.
Totally agree. Totally agree. And when you speak it, it's real, right? That's why the power of questions is such a big deal, because you can pull things from people that when they say it, it's real. Like, I'm sure you've experienced this, where somebody has had something that they've kept inside and it's festered forever, and they finally let it out. And then as soon as they let it out, they sort of relax and their shoulders drop and they just look almost euphoric. And then they'll look at you and go, you know, it doesn't seem as big now that I said it.
Right.
That's why, that's why I'm after people all the time to go deep, find where the pain is, right? So ask questions that help you. We do it with piggyback questions, right? But ask questions that help you dig to where you find the pain that your client is having. Let them express it to you, and that will bond you with them, because you care enough to ask. You care enough to ask enough to get to that place. And once you get to that place, and once they get it off their chest, they feel better. They just feel better, and they'll never forget what you did for them.
Well, one thing that's in the book is we have a chapter on what we call jamming, like a music jam, a jam session. And my company, because of my musical background, we conduct jam sessions with clients. So, Mike, this piggybacks off everything you're saying. When we do a jam session with a client and their team, and we'll do about 100 a year. So we do a lot of jam sessions. The first thing we do is we describe what a jam is, and we say, what's the most important thing in a jam? And few people understand what it is, and it's listening.
Yeah.
Listening. So if you think about it, if you can recall a music jam, let's say somebody's playing lead guitar and somebody's playing piano, okay? That piano player plays some melody. Well, that guitarist needs to listen to that person's melody to then respond. Now, if that guitarist is not paying attention and is not listening, that guitarist is going to go do something else. And if that piano player is not listening, that is called garbage. That is called noise. So one thing you're talking about listening, one thing that is so important if you want to collaborate is listening. You must listen to be able to share something and piggyback off of what other people are saying so that you can create something great. And that's what you're doing. That's with your questions. You're listening and you're offering up a suggestion, and your customer is then giving you feedback and listening, and you're giving them feedback. In essence, you're conducting a jam session, and you're creating a brand new idea that had never existed prior. That's how a song is created.
I love it. I absolutely love it. And you know, it's interesting because conversation nowadays is I'm speaking and you're trying to think about what you're going to say next. That's actually the textbook definition of a debate. And I can tell you that because I was one of the best debaters in the nation when I was in school. That's a debate. A conversation is you're speaking and I'm listening to what it is that you're saying, right? And then I may ask you about something that you just said. Does that make sense?
Right.
So I may ask you, so tell me in a jam session, right? How is it that you do what you do this way in a jam, right? And it's literally me asking you a more specific question about what it was that you just said. We call it active listening.
Yes.
But it's a way for people to understand that you care enough to listen, and then you care enough to ask about what they just said.
Well, to give you an example, many of your listeners may be in these situations. You're in a meeting, let's say it's in a conference room, and there's a half dozen or a dozen people talking, and they're going back and forth, and they're talking about, hey, we could do this. Hey, well, we could do that. Hey, whatever. And then about half an hour into it, one person raises his hand and he goes, hey, here's an idea. What about blank? Mm-hmm. And somebody turns to him and says, we talked about that 20 minutes ago. Mm-hmm. And the reality is the person who blurted that out wasn't listening prior. He was getting ready so that he could be heard.
That's it.
And that's not our goal.
Right.
Our goal is to listen and not try to go shoehorn ourselves in and make noise.
Yeah.
We've got to be able to contribute. And that's what you're talking about.
Yeah. And if you're asking them, right, if you're asking them questions, it's engaging them. Right. And I'm absolutely convinced of this. We are programmed to answer questions out of the womb. And if you don't think so, go find yourself a newborn, put them in your arms, look them in the eye, and ask them a question. They will look right at you. They will focus right on you. Go find a toddler that's throwing a temper tantrum. All you have to do is walk up to them and ask them, what happened? They'll stop crying. They'll forget what it was that it completely interrupts their pattern. And all of a sudden they're looking at you like, I don't remember why I was upset. It's literally, we are programmed to answer questions. And what happens is we can get people to focus and we can get people to engage by literally asking them questions.
Yes. Well, my son, we talked about this. My son was a cesarean birth. I was there at his birth. The doctor got him out. He was screaming at the top of his lungs. The doctor handed him over to my wife, and my wife said, hi, Alan, and he shut up and he was fine. And the doctor said, well, he knows his mama's voice.
Yep.
We are programmed to listen.
Yeah, I promise you. I promise you we are. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've experienced it too. That's awesome. So let me ask you that. I can't wait to read this book, by the way. So when is it going to be available for pre-order? Or do we know?
It will be available for pre-order early March.
Okay.
About March 1st.
Okay.
And Simon Schuster is readying it right now. So, you can't rush some of these publishing companies, but
I got you.
That's what happens.
Yeah. I'm super excited though. I'm ready to read it now.
Well, I appreciate it. And I'll tell you, I really love your show. And I think the message you bring is so positive and powerful. I thank you for that, Mike. I think it's fantastic.
I appreciate you, sir. I cannot thank you enough from the bottom of my heart for being here. I have thoroughly enjoyed every minute that we've had together. Thank you again for being our guest on the Mike Litton Experience. I'm super excited to talk to you again. So I'm sure we'll be getting together many, many more times. Barry LaBov, thank you. I cannot thank you enough.
You bet. And the website for my company is LAB as in boy, OV. So it's LABOV.com. So if you go there, you'll see information on the book. And when it is available for pre-order, it will be right there at LaBov.com.
LaBov.com. I love it. Thank you, buddy. Have a great day today and an amazing weekend. Okay.
You bet. Take care of yourself.
Thanks again. We hope you enjoyed another episode of the Mike Litton Experience. If you did, do us a favor, smash that subscribe button, tell your friends, family, and coworkers about our program, and wherever you get your podcasts, please leave us a rating. It helps us to connect with quality people just like you.
And that's a wrap. Another episode of the Mike Litton Experience in the books. Reach out to Mike on Instagram at Litton Realty. Want to meet with Mike? Check out calendly.com/Rio760.